Greetings and good Thursday morning, the 2nd of March. Still the third decade of the 21st century. I always open with that if you're new to my channel because I always like to strike a comparison against the fact that it is indeed, technically speaking, the third decade of the 21st century. And I always say that to kind of compare where we are, what's popular, what's currently being discussed, what topics, what trends, what concepts, and where people predicted us to be. And why I find that so interesting is because in recent events in the last few days, I've been, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess you could say exposed to some information that's really gotten me to think. So once again, if for any reason you're new to my channel, all I attempt to do is basically provide my thoughts and opinions on any particular subject, whether it's nerdy, geeky stuff or whether it's socio-political stuff, and invite other people to comment and basically demonstrate that we can have conversations even with strangers and be very civil. Stace, don't know where you are. Miss you. Hope you come back. Miss your commentary. Hope everything's going well for you. Hopefully everything with your book is going well. But look forward to your comments. This is going to be a bit more socio-political in nature. So I apologize if I bounce around a little bit, if I don't seem to follow a linear path, but I'll do my level best. So first and foremost, I recently discovered within the last several months a gentleman by the name of Patrick Bet-David. Apparently he's a very successful businessman who's done very well for himself. He's connected with a lot of celebrities, and he's kind of sort of in his own way a different version of Joe Rogan. He's typically quite neutral on certain subjects and yet not afraid to express his personal thoughts and opinions on various subjects. He's technically what you would call an Iranian immigrant, immigrated from Iran to Germany and then from Germany to the States. He's the child of divorce. He's a military service member, so he's a veteran. So there's certain things I can kind of wrap my head around and get with him on. Obviously, I can't necessarily see eye to eye with him on income, but you know, that's good for him. He's done very well for himself. But he recently did a podcast where he talked about this Sam Bankman-Fried. This guy that took lots and lots of money. Some of you might be familiar with it. That's not the point. The point was that his mom, who is like this raging, flaming liberal, like you look up like the worst things of a liberal, and like his mom is like in the background, like, yeah, over here. And apparently she's a professor. And she wrote this paper that was published where she essentially, and I'm going to paraphrase this, talks about the need to remove accountability. And that is the focus of my discussion today for the next 10 to 15 minutes, give or take. And why I think it's so important. Out of all the reasons I'm not a fan of the left, I'm not a fan of the excessive liberals, I'm not a fan of the Democratic Party. Out of all the reasons, one of those reasons happens to be accountability, or a lack thereof, and the indulgence in perpetuating the concept of removing accountability from the equation, where it's not your fault, you're not accountable for anything, it's always somebody else's. And that comes in many different flavors, whether that is the celebration of the victim, all right, giving points and stature and status to people who are victims. And I don't mean like legit victims, all right? I mean like creating a sense of victimhood out of people who are essentially not a victim of anything other than their own poor choices. People that are the victim of the sum total of their actions, all right? But then convincing them it's not their fault, it's somebody else's fault. And so Sam Bankman-Fried's mom writes this long paper on the removal of accountability. And the reason why it struck me is because in more recent news, Lori Lightfoot lost her bid for, I believe, a third term for the mayor of Chicago. Now, I no longer live in Chicago or the Chicagoland area. Quite frankly, I haven't lived there since 1994. But it's what I used to consider home. Technically speaking, where I am right now, the physical structure I'm in right now, I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else in my entire life. I've never lived anywhere else as long as I've lived in this physical house. And it just hit me the other day as how astonishing that was, but that's not the point. While Lori Lightfoot has no impact on me and doesn't have anything to do with me, I think her record as a politician speaks for itself. And once again, I was exposed to various commentary in the last 2 days where there are people that are speculating in the very near future, if not presently already, I mean, who knows, as today progresses on, it very well could come out that people are going to live up to everything I'm about to say. One commentator proposed that if she hasn't done so already, she's going to essentially blame her loss not on her policies, not on her abilities, not on how she handled the office as mayor, but she's going to blame her loss on her skin color, her sexual preference, and her assigned sex at birth. Part of me finds that funny because the Democratic Party is currently the party that cannot define what is a woman. I find that utterly atrocious, but anyways, so one person is currently speculating that she's going to blame her loss not on her ability to do the job or a lack thereof, but the fact that she's a woman, that she's a black woman, and that she's a gay black woman. All right, so 3 different things. And then another person went on to say, oh yeah, and because she was beaten by a straight white guy who's a pro-police candidate, that this is going to further exacerbate and perpetuate this mantra of systemic racism, patriarchy, white supremacy, homophobia, you name it. And what all of that stuff does is it puts up this defense that there's no accountability for Lori Lightfoot and how she physically executed the office of mayor. Now, I don't know if she actually has any accomplishments. Unfortunately, the commentary that I get exposed to, most people have negative things to say about how she operated in office. Things that she said, things that she did, how she ran that office. And I'm very, very hesitant because cherry picking goes both ways. All right. If you're pro one way, you'll cherry pick certain things in favor of your thoughts and beliefs, and quite the opposite. I once did a video where I basically said, when is enough ever enough? When do we stop competing? When do we stop cherry picking as if to create a point scale over wins and losses, right? But I think my point remains the same, where admittedly a lot of the commentary I do expose myself to did not paint Lori Lightfoot in a positive manner. And in the event that the left, in whatever amalgamation it is, starts to come out and say things like systemic racism, homophobia, patriarchy, anti-feminism, lesbianism, anti-black, all of these things, right? In my personal opinion, I think it's a bit of a wasted effort to more or less run interference for the fact that it's all a smokescreen to eliminate any blame, or as I like to put it, any I was just talking about it. How can I lose the word already? Starts with an A. I was just talking about the word accountability. Wow, this would have been a really, really awkward video, because that's actually the title of the video, accountability, right? So the way I see it is, if this does come true, if later today, tomorrow, whatever, that the left in any amalgamation comes out and starts running interference as if to remove any sense of accountability from Lori Lightfoot and her actual performance as mayor. What it does is it fuels my disdain for the Democratic Party, for the left. Now, admittedly, I haven't looked into it any further. I don't know if somebody actually did win, if Chicago does have a new mayoral elect, and whether or not it is a white male Republican. I don't know. I know for years and years and years, Chicago's been run by Democrats, and I think the Democratic record in Chicago speaks for itself, but I'll leave it alone. I think there's some legitimacy to the concept of we're starting to live in a society where we have began the process of removing accountability. And this could go in many different ways. Oh, it's systemic racism. It's the white patriarchy keeping people down. Is it? Or is that just a convenient excuse to remove the accountability for the sum total of some people's actions? That they're not technically responsible for their, pardon my language, but their shitty performance, their piss poor conduct, their piss poor decision-making process. It's not their fault. It's these other attributes. This, like I said, the white systemic racist patriarchy, whatever, blah blah blah. And you know, I find myself in a situation where I'm like, God, you know, that seems to be a very, very dominant theme of the left, removing the accountability from the proposed victim, making victims out of people that are not victims. And in order to do that, you have to remove accountability from the equation. They are not accountable for their actions. They're actually victims. And it's funny because I think in a lot of my socio-political videos, that's kind of what I've been getting at the whole time, is we're creating victims where victims don't necessarily exist. We're excessively celebrating victims and actually taking away from legitimate victims. All right? Where it starts off with legitimate victims of a legitimate crime or a legitimate discrepancy. It becomes popular. It becomes trendy. People jump on the bandwagon, and now everybody wants to be a victim of that particular discrepancy, right? And I think it starts to tear away at the actual victims of that discrepancy. And it starts to remove accountability from people who want to be victims. So I think there's something to that, where, you know, we're living in a society where nobody wants to be held accountable for their actions, that they want to be able to blame somebody else, and conveniently only one political party, in my personal estimation, is essentially catering to those whims, catering to that notion, catering to that idea. And the other thing I find so funny on the concept of accountability, you're starting to see a significant change. You're starting to see the tide change with how we approach COVID. All right? Oh, it really is from China. Oh, it really was because of gain-of-function research. And it's like, there's been this massive denial and cover-up for years. Well, at least a couple years. I wouldn't say years as in many, many plural. But now that new information's coming to light, and the left in all of its amalgamations has been denying it, you know, calling it conspiracy theories, now they're starting to support it. Where's the accountability on that? Where's the accountability for the original people that were like, no, this didn't happen? Where's the accountability for the people that started it, the people that, you know, actually funded it, the people that, you know, got this gain-of-function research going? Where's the accountability for the leak? And where's the accountability for the people that tried to cover it up? I don't know, but I think I've gone on long enough. I'm almost at the 15-minute mark, so here's the deal. I've said my piece. I'd like to hear from you. Anybody who took the time to watch this video, I don't care about the likes, the subscriptions, the notifications, the bells, whatever. I'm just trying to stimulate conversations. Whether you agree, whether you disagree, whether you're somewhere in the middle, I don't care. Just leave a comment. And I promise you, I will read, react, and respond to your comment. And if you do, I appreciate it. And you're awesome. Till next time.